Welcome back. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. Today we are going to Newcastle. Yes, I know we rarely go to Newcastle, but today we are going there. We are asking a very simple question. Will Newcastle make the top 4 at the end of the season? Will Newcastle make the top 4 at the end of the season? They've started the season quite well. You know, they are playing very well. They've picked points off Man City, I believe, and Man United as well. So it looks like they are playing very, very, very well. We're asking whether or not they will make top 4 at the end of the season. So, will they make top 4?
No.
Why?
Because I don't see them having that temperament to withstand the chase.
Okay.
Especially when it gets to the business end of the season in March, in February. I don't see them having that temperament and that kind of mentality because you have a lot of players that haven't been in that position before. You have players that are playing well but have come from lower teams, if I can put it that way. You have guys coming in from Burnley, you have guys coming in from Brighton, like the Dan Burns, Matt Target, Nick Popes and co. Miguel Almiron hasn't necessarily been in a pressure-filled situation as, let's say, chasing a top 4 spot. We've seen it happen over and over again with Leicester City over the years, where they are on the brink of making the top 4, and some way, somehow, they end up missing out on the top 4.
But they didn't win the league, Leicester.
Yes, they did win the league, but who were the characters who formed the core of that team, or title-winning team? All of them had departed at that point in time.
Vardy and Schmeichel
Vardy still there. Schmeichel is just left.
One is playing as a striker, one is playing as a goalkeeper. In between the two, there's a vast gap of a lot of variables and factors. And that gap or that space was filled by guys who hadn't been in that position before. And that's what led to they missing out on the top 4 spots in 2 straight seasons. And so I see the same thing happening with this Newcastle team. They don't have enough guys who have that temperament, who have been in that situation before, to be able to withstand the heat of a top 4 chase or position chase. And on top of that, Eddie Howe is good, but I still see him as a guy who is building up his profile. And so I add all that up, and I don't see them being able to make it to the top 4, knowing very well also that in the depth of the team, especially at the back line, it's a bit suspect. Because once you take out Fabian Schär, who replaces him? Jamel Lascelles. Lascelles is almost always injured. And on top of that, in the front line, Callum Wilson, who is their reliable, regular goal scorer, is almost always unavailable. Their talisman, Alain Maximin, is almost always unavailable. And so when I put all those factors into the pot and mix it up, I don't see them being able to make it to the top 4.
Interesting.
I don't disagree with Yao, but I feel like Yao is being very dismissive of Newcastle. And that's my problem with the way he's come across. It will be a very hard ask for them, no doubt about it. But ASM has missed how many games recently? Maybe 5-6 games. They've won games without him. It didn't matter. Callum Wilson wasn't there. They've won games. Almiron is in the form of his life, but it's not like Almiron just learned how to play football. I mean, he was very good in the MLS. He was one of the best players in the league. He won a title in the MLS, and the MLS playoff system is very brutal, as we all know, It's like playing the Champions League, just at a lower level, but it's like playing the Champions League. So I don't think pressure is a problem for him in that sense. And when you look at the players, it doesn't matter who comes in. There's a system. They play well. I was not very high on Eddie Howe, but since he has taken the job, remember last season we said it, Eddie Howe was probably the manager of the year. When you look at the Premier League, because the job there, everyone said Newcastle was going down. And he ended up finishing them 11th, 10th, because they just flew. They just kept on winning games, and they are just getting better. And I don't think even the injuries are worrying them that much, because even when players are missing, there was a game they played, there was no Bruno Guimaraes. I thought, no Bruno Guimaraes, no party. The midfield was fine. I think it was Longstaff, Joe Willock, and someone else, and they still did their job. So I don't see it as much of a problem as Yao is making it, because we've seen them perform. They're the first team to beat Spurs at home. Okay. Spurs had an unbeaten record at home. Newcastle went there and won. They put 3 past Man City. How often do you see Man City conceding 3? They played a 3-3 Man City. It was a last-minute goal that robbed them of a point against Liverpool. So you keep seeing what they are doing and the way they are playing. And maybe you can say they don't have the names, they don't have the pedigree, but what we are seeing on the pitch is showing that that's not as important as we would like to think. Because on the face of it, they've been one of the better teams in England this year. And even then, they had a difficult patch in the beginning of the season where they were drawing too many games. But there's a lot of quality in there, despite all of that. And so I'm not afraid of them making the top 4 in the sense that if they don't make it, it's not a big problem. But I'm not going to say that because these players are getting injured, this is happening. Because even players you don't expect to play well, someone like Jacob Murphy, when he comes into the team, he plays well. Joelinton has played as a midfielder, he's played as a winger, he's doing well. So I'm not too afraid for Newcastle in the sense that even when injuries come, Eddie Howe seems very adaptable, very intelligent, and he's making things happen. So I feel like I was being very dismissive of Newcastle, not in the sense that to say that they can't make it, but he's saying like it's an impossibility. I don't think that's true at all, because we've seen their performances against the teams in and around them, the teams that they're supposed to compete against for the top 4 spots. And I wouldn't say they've had a bad performance against any single one of them. They've been better than. They played very well against Liverpool. They beat Spurs. They played very well against City. Man U was probably their worst performance, but even then they got the result in terms of a draw. So I don't see what he has seen to make him think that they can't compete with those teams.
I mean, he was talking about experience, and to break into the top 4, you need a certain temperament, you need to have something that
some extra flavor. It's like Real Madrid and the Champions League.
Not necessarily extra flavor, but you need to have. If you have experience in your team, you will know how to handle yourself in the running, for example.
I agree with that, but another point I've noticed is that right now teams can't go to St. James Park anymore. They struggle with going to St. James Park, and that's a big advantage, because if you know that most of your home games, their team is going to struggle and wilt when they come there, you have that advantage. It makes your home games are going to be a walk in the park, and that's half your points. So, and it's not like they play badly away either. It's not like they go away and they struggle. So there's a lot of talent in their team, and I only feel there's going to be more talent because we know they have that financial capital they have that financial power right now. So we go in after the World Cup in January. We are yet to see the moves they make in January.
Okay.
So some of the problem positions where you say there's a lack of depth, they might even solve those things by bringing players in. Because Bruno Guimaraes, again, was signed in January. And look at what a signing he's turned out to be. So I am not worried for Newcastle at all. I don't expect them to finish 4th, but the possibility they can is probably higher than a lot of people are making out. And Yao is one of them, because he's being too dismissive. It's going to be a difficult mountain to climb, but he's making it like I'm expecting Aston Villa. Like, it sounds like he's talking about Aston Villa.
Because also, aside just looking at Newcastle exclusively, you also have to look at the other teams and which other teams are also contending for that top 4 spot. And you look through that list, Newcastle is the team less likely or least likely to make it to the top 4, knowing very well that those teams under different managers are building up slowly and gradually and are most likely to get better once the season draws to an end. And on top of that, in the January transfer window, they are likely to add more quality to their team. So once you add more quality to your team, and the fact that those teams have managers with a higher profile than Eddie Howe, you definitely fancy a team like Man United making it to the top 4. You definitely fancy a team like Chelsea making it to the top 4 at this point in time. And you definitely fancy a team like Tottenham Hotspur because of their ability to grind out wins. Their midweek game against in the Champions League against Marseille, they were dead and buried. They were heading out of the Champions League automatic qualification spot. But then in the final minute, Højbjerg strikes and they win it. They top the group and they qualify to the next stage.
What was that energy when they played Newcastle 2 weeks ago? Newcastle finished them. So I'm not concerned, because the fact is they can hold their own against those teams. We've seen them play about 4 or 5 out of the top 6. The only ones they've not played are Arsenal and Chelsea. And they've given creditable performances in all of those games. I don't expect them to struggle when they are playing the teams in the bottom half, because they've played them and they are scoring 4 goals, they are scoring 3 goals. So I feel like you're underrating them a lot. And to your point about the January, established teams usually don't strengthen in January. Strengthening in January is usually teams that are I feel like they're in crisis. But don't you
feel that maybe Newcastle will look at their notes and say, okay, between January and May is about 4 or 5 months, right? Why they could say, okay, let's just add a few more bodies to this team and maybe help us push top 4. in January? I mean, it is possible. Financially, they are in a place where...
So I'm saying Newcastle is more likely because they are a less established team. They are still trying to build up the type of squad they want.
Okay.
If you look at teams like United, Arsenal, Chelsea, historically in January, if maybe someone gets seriously hit or something like that, before they go and look for players in January, they try not to do as much business as possible in the summer. And then in January, if there's anything that they missed or some injury has come up, they do that. Newcastle, on the other hand, are willing to buy key players they need in January because they are still trying to build their team up. And that's a key difference. And unless a team is very far off, we're not going to see a lot of January transfers for them. And to your point, with Liverpool, I would say Arsenal and City are the only sureties for top four right now. Yeah. So with Spurs, who are not, we said already, are not playing well.
They're getting results.
They're getting results, but how long will it last?
And how long would Miguel Almiron's form last? I don't see it happening lasting the entire season.
It could be. This could be Almiron's proper breakout season. Let me put it that way. So you never know how a player's form will turn out.
I think with Almiron, we have to judge him differently because when he was under Steve Bruce, if you are getting the ball just outside your penalty area, what can you do with the ball compared to if you are getting the ball just outside the opposition team's 18-yard area? We used to watch the Steve Bruce Newcastle. How often was Almiron getting the ball in good positions? We are now seeing him getting the ball in good position. We're now seeing what he can do. So to say that Almiron's form would dip, this is actually the first time we've seen him actually get the chance to attack. Before, what they used to do, give him the ball and make him run 70 yards. Wouldn't he be tired by the time he gets to the box?
His decision making was always poor. And I always say that.
But even poor decision making, you can get away with it if you are getting in the box enough. Even Alan Saint-Maximin, he has very poor decision making, but because he is getting a lot of more chances in the box, he's looking better. Yeah. Look, I'm not saying that they are going to make top four, but like I said, they have been very dismissive of them.
You want to give them a bit of a chance?
No, they have way more than a bit of a chance. I think they have a very good chance.
I say so because you have to look at the other teams because with Man United, for instance, Cristiano Ronaldo is likely to leave in the January transfer window. So they might end up going to get a striker to replace him. And when you look at Man United, their progress under Erik ten Hag, once they get in a striker, a lethal striker like, let's say, a Vlahovic, in the January transfer window, that's the cherry on top of the cake.
Can I answer your question? Which strikers do you think will be available in January? Do you think Juventus, who just spent 70 million on Vlahovic to go their project, will let him go?
At this point in time, the project is going south. So they might end up wanting to cash in on Man United's lucrative offer.
There's no way Juventus are going to cash on Vlahovic.
And on top of that, Chelsea, you have to look at Chelsea, for instance. I mentioned the fact that they need an N'Golo Kante type of player. So the January transfer, they will definitely go.
But he'll be back in January.
But how long? How can you rely on him?
You have to give him the benefits of that. So that's why I doubt they will buy a DM.
So with Chelsea, they are likely to go in for a guy who is familiar with the Potter style, and that's Caicedo, and that's the kind of business I expect them to do to be able to make it to the
60 million, how likely do you think Chelsea are to stamp up 60 million after the huge window they've had in the summer? Let's not forget they've paid 200 million in fees in excess of. I don't see them paying another 50-60 million for another player.
If they want to get better, they will have to spend an extra amount of money to be able to get it. And Caicedo plays a more premium position than Cucurella, and we saw how much money they paid for Cucurella.
So the conclusion is that so you want to give Newcastle a chance. A good chance.
More than a chance.
They could 70%.
I'll say they are front runners right now.
Front runners outside the established teams to make top four.
Oh yeah.
And then you say
no way. I'll give them 30,
no way. They are not making top four. Okay, we wait to see how all of this will play out come the end of the season in May. We wait to see what will happen in terms of Newcastle and how they fare. But that's the Premier League preview show on Citi TV.